communications. This is where we're at the top of our pyramid. This is where we're creating new solutions. And we need to be able to communicate that with people. I'm a big fan, and I know that these things are not wildly popular anymore, but I say bring the blog back. Microsoft still relies very heavily on blog to communicate to us. The project teams have a blog, so why don't we have a blog for this project? We need to make sure that we're communicating not just in an email. We have to find other ways to do this. It needs to be an article on the homepage. It needs to be posters in the elevator, which I know are far less relevant now than they used to be. If we don't have a poster in the elevator anymore, why aren't we mailing things to people's homes? I mean, I can still mail you a coaster with the project name on it. I can still send you a little squeaky toy or a little card, or consider how communications are going to have to look differently now that we're communicating with people who are potentially working from home. At the very least, they need to know the project timeline. They need to know a project timeline exists. Let me put it that way. Whether or not they're interested in what that project timeline is, we need to make sure that they know it exists, and they need to start communicating to them what it's going to look like. So here's what it looks like now, and here's what it's going to look like in the future. And you can even say artist rendition or, design mock-up type of a thing. But again, go out to the internet and find examples of what these things look like inside the modern workplace, so that you can say, here's what it looked like before, here's potentially what it could look like in the future, just to start getting those images in people's minds. You don't want the first time that they see 365 to be the day that you roll it out. So announcing the project timeline, just making sure that they know the timeline exists, making sure that they know where they can get more information, who the project lead is, who they can contact if they have concerns. Now, this is where I would use your executive chain of command. And I know that you have no control over whether or not these people communicate anything. I know it's a frustration that is as old as time, but I do think that it is at least your IT manager's job and role and responsibility and commitment to you to meet with the department heads separately and say, this is our project timeline. This is when we are rolling each person out. Now, remember, my definition of a rollout is a delta migration, not the initial migration. Remember, I want the migration to happen in secret, and then I just want the cutoff date to be the date that we've decided that that's when we're going to do the delta. And if I'm using a word that nobody has heard before, delta just means what's changed. The migration tool that you're going to use has a feature that lets you only then bring back over anything that's changed since the initial migration. So you need to announce that timeline, and your IT manager needs to make sure that accounting, they have real procedures that they're required to do every single month. There are times of the month that are good for them and times of the month that are impossible for them. You need to make sure that when you've put together that timeline, that you know exactly what time of the month you've got accounting's attention so that they can validate that everything has come over. Otherwise, they're just going to tell you, yeah, it's all there, and then you're going to find out later, no, it's not. So then announce the training plan. So please, for the love of everything good and sacred in my life, have a training plan, whatever that's going to look like, whether that looks like a third party that's going to be delivering this information, whether or not this is going to be the BA who's delivering training. But they need to know times and locations. They need to understand what their resources are. Don't just say, contact the help desk if you have any questions. Nobody wants to contact the help desk, you guys. Don't be ridiculous. I mean, I wish they would. I hope that your organization has confidence in your help desk, but especially if you have a third-party help desk, very few people I know in oil and gas have any confidence whatsoever in their help desk, and so they just don't reach out. You need to give them real people, and you need to make sure that there's a project team of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be IT folks. It just has to be your champions, the people who have showed an interest, people who come to sessions like this. So these are people in your organization that we used to call them like power users. Use them as your way to have a resource that says, hey, will you be willing to at least be the sounding board for accounting or for safety so that we can escalate these issues on a weekly basis back to the project team? Doesn't have to be a manager, probably shouldn't be a manager in my opinion. It should be a customer or a client. And so that it's easier to manage that single group of people than it is for you to try to manage everybody. Now, that being said, I'm going to contradict myself, because we need to have as many opportunities for people to reach out to us as possible. So I need you to have a feedback loop as well. So on your intranet, I want to make sure that while this project is going on, that you have some sort of a button or something that says feedback, or do you have a concern? People feel like there is just literally a contact us form, so that at any given moment, they're not necessarily going to the help desk. Now, don't get me wrong. That's probably, that contact us is probably a workflow that creates a help desk ticket. Shh, nobody needs to know that. That's just between us, okay? But you need to give people a feedback loop. It's a great, big, huge button on the homepage of the intranet, so that they can communicate with the team at any time. Then audience definition. So this is just how I tend to define my audiences from a training perspective: top level leadership and their assistants. What is it with us leaving the assistants out? I mean, if you don't have assistants, that's one thing, but please believe me when I say they speak for their top level leadership, and you're not going to get anything done if you don't convince them that it's a good idea. Always make sure that you include the assistants with your top level leadership. EAs are the most powerful group. There is no doubt about it. And you know why they're the most powerful group? Because they will spread gossip and rumors, and you want to use that. Use that. Make sure they know every single thing. And when I say every single thing, make sure they know why the project has been delayed. Make sure that they know why. I don't understand why we're not transparent. Like, why do we think that we're going to get it so perfect and so right that we're not ever going to have to communicate to people and tell them that something wheeled out of our control? They're human beings. They understand that. I believe it is not going to, as long as it doesn't make you seem incompetent, let's be clear, it will buy you some time, right? Nobody's ever going to be upset in the business that the project's been delayed. Most people don't want to change. And so I don't know why telling them that something has been delayed is like this horrible news. Always make sure your assistants know why something is different, why something has changed. We kept calling it Teams, or we kept calling it Office 365, and now we're calling it Microsoft 365. Which one is it? Just make sure your admins know it, and then they'll spread the word for you. Then you've got your department-specific leadership and support staff. I would add process leaders. So add those people into that list. And again, as you're doing that analysis, you've already got this probably in your security matrix anyway. You've probably already defined these audiences. And then, of course, your all employees. So as far as a training plan goes, if you come from a training background like I do, this seems just so simple that like I feel like I can just skip over this slide. But I wanted to just go on ahead and just give you some of these scenarios. Scenario-based training is going to be the best training. One of the other reasons why I typically will say don't brand too soon or don't brand out of the box is because it limits your access to training that's actually going to look like what the users have. If you're going to use a company like a Brainstorm for videos, or you're going to use LinkedIn Learning, whatever it is that you're going to use, remember all of those demonstrations are going to be out of the box. Branding, they're all going to be out of the box, the modern look and feel. So make sure that at first, I would always say branding to me is a phase 2. It's not a phase 1. What makes you most successful is the thing that's the easiest to train. And the thing that's easiest to train is the thing that they can do an internet search or a YouTube search for. But they also need help curating that content. So I'm not saying you have to spend any money on your training program, because I know they're not going to give it to you anyway. Hopefully they do, don't get me wrong. But if they don't give it to you, you still need to go out and you need to find the YouTube videos and you need to find what's free. It's all about curating that content. You still need to make it easy for people to find. You still need to give them a page that says, hey, if you're doing this type of a thing, if you want to know more about meeting notes, this is all of the content that we've put together that we think will be useful. If you want to follow up with somebody on this to get a demo for your group, there's your contact us button on that page, you guys. It's all about having that same consistent feedback loop. And I know you want to make it a help desk ticket, and you still can, but trust me when I say make it a contact us button. Don't make it contact a help desk, because they don't want to hear that. So just some more scenarios that you can consider. People like to do FAQs. You're going to have to create one for the project anyway, so it's a great opportunity to have a training scenario around that. Meeting notes, shared calendars. These are people. This is all the same stuff, you guys. People have been wanting this forever. How are they doing external sharing now? Project and task management. How are they going to publish things? Again, you're going to have to do this for the project anyway. You might as well make a training event out of it. So, you know how Microsoft so often will do those sessions where it's like, this is how we did it, right? Well, why can't you do a training session like that? This is how we did it. This is how we published an FAQs. This is how we created a contact us button. This is how we wrote the flow that creates a help desk ticket. Oh, see, your secret's out. You know what I mean? So just use your own experience. We don't call it dog food for nothing, right? Use your own experience and create training material based on your own experience that will then help your users. And then finding people and available resources.